It's July, and there are just a couple of weeks left now before we get evicted from our rented house.
Just when I thought nothing else could go wrong, we've just found out that the folding sliding doors that are now in here are fitted upside down, and the frames are in the wrong way. And there isn't just one of these, there's two of these, and they've all got to be ripped out.
Meanwhile, at least upstairs some progress was being made as Jim worked on finishing joinery.
Today's not been one of the better days in the world of house building. Unfortunately, they found out that the doors were put on the wrong way round, upside down, and they've all been plastered in. One of them's been ripped out, the other one's going to be ripped out tomorrow. The plasterers had to leave because we just couldn't make a safe working platform for them to get the high up areas of the house, which had become a bit of a nightmare. Plus my hay fever's killing me.
Things started to seem better the next day as we changed the working platform and made it a little bit safer for the plasterers. And they got on plastering the very high 6 metre tall ceiling.
The owner of the window and door company called me up earlier on today, and he actually was really good about the problem with the doors being in upside down. So they've agreed to pay for everything to do with repairing them, which you can't really say fairer than that. I guess this is where you find out whether the company's any good or not when something goes wrong, and how good they are at fixing it. And you know, they didn't argue or anything, they just put their hands up and says, look, we made a mess here, we'll sort it out, which you can't say fairer than that.
Back at our rented house, things were starting to get a little bit stressful. We only had a few more days left there, and then we'd be living with my parents until the house was finished. With 2 kids, that wasn't something that I really had in mind. On Sunday night, a whole range of equipment was delivered to the house to start to do some drilling. I'd decided that not only were we going to drill holes for the boreholes for the ground source heating, but we were also going to drill for water. And I'd given up with a private water supply. The drilling team started out by welding a shoe on the bottom of a 10-foot steel pipe. The drilling rods went through this steel pipe, but this cased the top part to stop any contamination going into the boreholes. Then off they went, and I just had to keep my fingers crossed that they would hit some water. The waste pipe from the rig was vented out into the field, and we were just looking for water to come out of that.
It's a little bit tense at the moment because they're drilling for water, but they couldn't really drill in any of the locations that the water diviner found because they're too close to a septic tank or they were inaccessible by the drill rig. So they're drilling, and I'm desperately hoping there's water. This borehole's costing about £3,000, and if they don't find water, then I'm pretty knackered.
They drilled and we waited and waited. Still no water. So they just drilled deeper. And I started to get very worried. Then, all of a sudden, a trickle of water, and that turns into a torrent. Didn't really fancy drinking it much, but we actually hit some water, which was a very, very good sign and a very much a relief for me. We were left with a 74-metre hole in the ground that I told Jamie was so deep it went onto the other side of the world. So he tried to shout his auntie who lives in New Zealand.
No.
Did you hear her before?
What?
Did you hear her before when you shouted it?
Yeah.
You did? This here is my well hole, which is for all my drinking water is going to come out of here. Now unfortunately we've had a little bit of an incident by my small son Finley. We've got to keep this obviously as pure as possible and no contaminants in it, but he saw it as a little bit of a hole and decided to throw a half-eaten crunchy bar down into it. We're not quite sure what that's going to do and whether that's going to cause a problem to the water supply.
So Finley's dropped a crunchy into the well, and we've heard that you can get your well water supply contaminated with bacteria. So I'm going to conduct an experiment to see what happens when you put a crunchy into water, and hopefully it will just dissolve, although I am worried that the water will taste the crunchy for the rest of our lives. So I'm just going to drop this into the water and see what happens. This is what Finley did. Now I think that's going to sink down. I think we should come back in 10 minutes and see if it's sunk.
10 minutes later, and we have what I could only describe as a very sick person's urine sample. I did not fancy drinking that one little bit.
Well, there's the ongoing problem with our water, and at last I've been able to put all the bits together to try and work out whether I can pump water out of the borehole that we've got. Now I've just been working over here on the electrics, and I put together a little bit of a test rig. So let's look around here, and that goes up to the consumer unit over there, and this all goes out to a coil of cable which is just down on the floor at the moment. But then that goes all the way up there and into that hole, of which there's a big blue pipe that runs all the way around and down to here. Now the big question is, what happens when I turn it on? So I'm about to go and turn it on. Ooh, sounds good, sounds good. Water.
Filming.
I've done a lot of electrics and a lot of plumbing. I think I could be an electrician, but being pissed wet through as a plumber I just couldn't do. I'm absolutely soaking.
It's now only 2 days to go before we get kicked out of our rented house, and we still can't even flush the toilets in the new house.